good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this docVinci webinar on how to freshen up your terms of business. Thank you very, very much for coming on this Tuesday afternoon. I know that you've got a lot of things to be doing, so we'll keep this short. This is going to be about 30 minutes today, and we'll have some time at the end for questions as well. But throughout, if you do have any questions, please just drop them into the Q&A or to the chat box, and we'll probably get to them at the end, unless we see something that really strikes our fancy throughout, and we'll answer it live. Also, this will be recorded, so don't worry if you miss anything. We'll send it out afterwards, so you can share it and you can watch it afterwards if you want to as well. So I'm just going to pull up my slides. By the way, if you're here, drop a big hello in the chat box so we can get some community going around this as well. So hopefully everyone can see that. John has raised his hand, which I think might just be a hello. So hello, John. Hope you're all well, mate. And we'll just start our slides. There we go. So anyone, let me know in the chat box if you cannot see the slides, but it looks like everyone can see them. Okay. So today we're going to be looking at an area which is probably not the most exciting area of design, I'm going to be honest, but it is our bread and butter work. Today we'll be talking a lot about these documents, which form part of the initial disclosure process, but also really do leave a lasting impact on your clients, which you may not think that they actually do. So the first thing I say is, and apologies for the expletives, but this shit does matter. It is more important than you think it is to make sure that this stuff matches your brand and it actually looks good. And the reason for that, and this is something that we've had lots of conversations on in the past. You know, before we launched docVinci, we had these conversations with people saying to us, you know, does it really matter what your documents look like at the start? Does it really matter what your terms of business looks like? Because it is a regulatory document. It's to explain legal issues, it's to explain everything to the clients in a clear manner. And so, you know, do we need to really focus on the design of those documents? And I think it's a reasonable kind of objection to designing these documents. But the important thing is that this is at the very start of the process. So when clients are coming to you, they're often coming to you for the very first time. It's the first time that many of them have been to a financial planner before. So you need to get off to a good impression. And that's why I think, and I explain throughout this, why I think this stuff really, really does matter. And I've said this a few times, but I mean, you can look at the document on the left-hand side there. That I'm not going to tell you whose terms of business that is. But if it looks like this, why would the clients expect anything else? Now, you've probably seen this document or something like this a few times. It might even look like what yours looks like, and that's absolutely fine. But my question to you and my proposition to you today is, if this is what your clients see, and if this is their first impression of you, why would they expect anything else throughout the whole entire process from you? Now, we know that, I've said this before as well, financial planning is not boring. It's not black and white. It's not dull. It's not legal, and it's not overly regulatory. It's fun. It's exciting. It's giving people new lives. It's letting them achieve their goals and objectives that they want to in life. But if this is what they see, and if this is their first impression of you and your business, why would they expect anything else? If they get you, who's friendly, who's warm, who's welcoming, who's exciting, but then they get this document, it doesn't quite match up. And that's why I think that your documents need to match you, your personality, but most importantly, your brand, and they need to make people excited. So I've used this quote a few times in the past, but it's really, really important to get into everyone's heads, is that the brain is an ignoring machine. And this comes from a guy called Anthony Tascal. And I talked about him on LinkedIn today as well in the social post. He goes by the name Taz. But the important point about it is that the brain is an ignoring machine. It is looking, rather than looking for things to find interesting, it's looking for things to ignore, because the brain, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but the brain's main focus and the brain's main goal is to conserve energy. It's to be efficient. Your brain takes up a huge amount of energy, a huge amount of calories, so it doesn't have the time to look for things that it should know. Basically, it's up to you guys to signpost what is most important to your clients. And this is why things like financial plans, one-page financial plans, all that kind of stuff on the kind of deliverable side has been so popular, is because clients really do interact with it. And there's a reason behind that. It's because it's the brain. The brain engages with stuff when you tell it really quickly and you get to the point really fast. And I think that is everything in society today. You know, we're so busy, we've got so much bombarding us at all times, our brain is in overload the whole time. So it ignores everything unless it finds stuff interesting. And that's what your job is. So there's 6 things that we'll go through today. I think that will freshen up your terms of business. Some of them you'll already kind of think, oh, well, they're obvious. Some of them might be a bit more surprising, but we'll go through 6 of them, and then we'll leave some time for questions at the end if you have any more ideas as well. So the first of those is the obvious one, and that is length. Now, as you can imagine, over the last 2 or 3 years of doing this with financial planning businesses, I've seen terms of business which are 15 pages long. I've seen them right up to 65 pages long. Now, there's no kind of problem with a 65-page, well, there is a problem with a 65-page document. I think we can all say that. But as long as it has everything in there, I think you would argue that that's absolutely fine. But the problem is that as our brains are in overload the whole entire time, the longer something is, as you know, the brain switches off at a certain point. Unless you've got the maximum focus level, especially when it's information like this, the brain just switches off. So length is actually the most important thing with these kind of things. And probably not what you'd expect me to say, but there is an argument, and I've tried to use alliteration as much as I possibly can here. It doesn't really work, but I've given it a go anyways. The argument is really between short and squashed and long and loose. Now, I put short and squashed in red and the other one in green is because possibly what you wouldn't expect is I actually think that length is not the most important thing. The most important thing is readability and engagement. So you can take all of that information and you can condense it into a really short document, but have it all squashed in, crammed in, tiny text, and it just, for the brain, that just is not readable at all. The better thing to do, in my opinion, is to actually just extend it, even if you need to do another 2 or 3 pages or whatever, but give the document room to breathe. That text can be a bit longer. It can be a bit more spread out. The main aim is readability. The main aim is not to reduce the length. Now, the shorter it is, the better, obviously, but that shouldn't come at the detriment of readability and engagement and ultimately beauty, to be honest. We want something that looks beautiful. We want something that looks engaging for your documents. So the argument of length is not as clear-cut as you would imagine. But an argument on length is definitely to simplify. So I've seen people send out or certain networks or compliance providers, teams asking financial planning businesses to send maybe 5-7 Word documents to clients at that part of the initial disclosure process. Now, I think everyone in the audience will probably agree that if you were a brand new client to a financial planning business and they sent you 7 documents attached to an email, that's not exactly going to scream to you ease, trust, simplicity. It just isn't. Now, the information is important, but you can simplify these things. So rather than sending 7 documents to your clients at the initial disclosure process, let's see if we can actually simplify everything and bring it all into maybe not even just 1 document to 1, 2, 3 documents. You're trying to reduce the amount of overwhelm that your clients have at the very start of the process. And I don't think that anyone in the audience, this comes new to them, but I'm just trying to remind you and trying to refresh in your brain that the most important thing for clients at the very start of the process is simplicity and trust. So if you're sending them 5, 7, 10 documents in 1 email or in a pack or whatever it is, that increases the amount of overwhelm. What we want to do is reduce the amount of overwhelm. Number 2 is the second most important one, and I think that is to signpost. So signposting is prevalent in pretty much everything that we do. But the most important thing to remember with it is that you're trying to, again, is to overcome that brain's ignoring of everything and to point people to the really, really important bits. And this is one of the problems with terms of businesses, is that there is no signposting normally. It's normally just one bit of legal information to the next, then it goes fees, then it goes process, and then you go signature at the end. What there's not in there is really any signposting to the important parts. Now there are, I think you would agree, there are more important parts of a terms of business than than other parts. For instance, a lot of the language around force majeure and all that kind of stuff and client money, it's not exciting, but you do need it in there. But the most important things, I think you would agree, are the fees, the process, all the kind of elements of what you'll actually be doing with clients. And those are the areas that we want to signpost to. And a popular one that people actually or don't signpost to, or they just kind of breeze past, is the FSCS. So obviously this is a huge benefit to clients. This is at the very start of the process. We're trying to increase the amount of trust. We're trying to increase the amount of benefits for clients. But a lot of people, when I've seen this, is they just hide the compensation scheme in their documents. And they say to clients, oh yeah, by the way, you get £85,000 worth of cover just in case anything goes wrong, but nothing ever will. I'm sure of that. Now, if you're a client, you're sat there and that's just gone straight over your head straight away. But I don't know why we're hiding this. This is a massive benefit to clients. You know, if we're trying to improve trust, having some kind of protection in place does exactly that. So in my opinion, you should definitely signpost towards something like this. So instead, well, that was exactly what we saw in the previous document. That's what it looked like before. And now this is what it looks like afterwards. So a little bit of design elements, just putting a bit of graphic in there and just trying to bring a splash of color into there that immediately draws the eye, not only of the clients, but of course of the advisor as well, to that element. And they know that they have to focus on this a bit more than they usually would, because it is an important benefit and it is important to explain to clients. This also applies to your process as well. So rather than hiding your process in the terms of business, where it just goes, you know, 1, we will do this, 2, we will do this, 3, we will do this, but it's not really displayed graphically. In this document here, which is the same one as the same firm as the one previously, we've actually, as you can see, we've included signposting of all of the different steps throughout there. So we've broken it up into 6 very, very clear steps. We've included graphics, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. But you can see that the eye is immediately drawn to those 6 circles. And then it goes to the step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And of course, we've changed the background of the document. Now, this just makes the eye focus on those different areas much more than it would if it was just hidden in some plain white box text. So this is really important as well for your process and, of course, your fees. I don't know why we would ever want to kind of hide fees, or whether we would ever want to not talk about fees or not focus on them. Clients are fine with, well, maybe not fine, but they expect to pay for financial planning. So the most important thing, if you're trying to build trust with them, is to just tell them what they are. Just be transparent. I know that no one actively tries to hide fees, but sometimes we do try and just kind of like put them in the details some places. Actually, I would argue that it's really important to explain at the very start of the process what clients can expect to pay throughout. So just be very clear about it in pounds and pence, like the regulator asks us to. Tell them what they're going to pay and what they'll get at each step for those fees as well. Because like I said, they're going to expect to pay some kind of fees. So it's no use in trying to hide them. Just tell them what they can expect to pay. And you can see in this example here, we've used signposting again. We've used a little timeline down the left-hand side to say this is step 1, steps 2, and steps 3. I've hidden the actual fees there because I don't think that firm would want me to tell you what their fees are. But of course, there's a little bit of information in there in the boxes as well. And we've actually broken it up between financial planning. This is what you'll pay, insurance. This is what you'll pay, and all the other products as well. And for instance, if you're doing advice only, you can break that up as well, just to show them the different things that they will pay for. And it just makes it lovely and clear for clients to understand rather than just white text. The third thing I want to talk about is something that I'm really, really passionate about. And it sounds really weird to say that out loud, actually, but is white backgrounds. So the brain is an ignoring machine. It looks for things that are a bit different. It looks for something to kind of throw it off guard a little bit. And if you're just going from one white page to the next, to the next, to the next, there's no difference in there. It's just, it all looks the same to the brain. It all just looks like it follows on from each other and it flows on, and it doesn't exactly scream any excitement in there at all. And, you know, when you're looking through these documents, that's what partially, I think, why people get bored, is because it's just one white page to the next. It looks exactly the same as the previous one before. The information isn't the most exciting in the world, as we know. It's not Shakespeare, but it doesn't help that we just keep the backgrounds the same color. And I think that even just by changing the color of 1 or 2 pages throughout your document, you can make a huge difference to the readability of it and really freshen it up. And I mentioned this before, is that the brain's number 1 rule is efficiency. So it's kind of tying on what we talked about at the start, is that the brain isn't your client's brain isn't actively looking for information in these. It's looking basically to be stopped in its tracks. And by stopping them in its tracks, even with just a tiny little subconscious thing, like changing the background of a certain page or changing the format of a certain page, that stops it in its tracks. And therefore the brain is overruling that thing of efficiency, and it's saying, hang on a second, this might be something that we need to know. You may not think it, but it is subconscious. And when you're going through documents, even just a change of color from one page to the next makes a huge difference to the readability of that document. So for example, in this document here, this was completely white backgrounds before. So before we revolutionized this document, it was all just white, and there wasn't any graphics, there wasn't any colors, there wasn't even little imagery in there. So all we did was we simply just used the brand colors, which were, as you can see there, it's white, blue, and black, and we just broke it up a little bit. So after one white page, there's a blue page, and then it might have a couple of blue pages, and then it'll go back to white, and then it might change to black. But what that does is it breaks it up, and it tells the brain, okay, we're on to a different segment now. So this means that we're looking at something else. Whereas if it was all white, the brain wouldn't know how to distinguish between one area to the other. So even just by using color, you can trick the brain or tell the brain into thinking, hang on a second, we're looking at something else here, so we need to switch back on again. We need to get back into this document because the stuff that we're reading is important. Same in this example here. So again, the information is, I mean, I think that's on the data protection and privacy notice. So it's, it's some of the most dull information in the world, really. Important information though. And so what that does is, after you've explained that bit, if you just make the background of one page a different color, it then tells the brain, right, we're moving on to something else now, so we can forget about all that kind of stuff. Let's focus on the next part. And it's subconscious, but it works. It definitely does work. So even just by changing 1 or 2 or 3 pages throughout your document, you can make a huge difference to the readability of it. Number 4 is something that we could not avoid, and that's the use of graphics. And to be honest, we don't really have any excuse not to use graphics nowadays. It used to be quite difficult to find graphics. Microsoft Word was terrible for graphics, and so you used to have to hire a designer or something like that. Nowadays, of course, we have the amazing tool which is called Canva, which a lot of you guys in the audience will probably know or have used. And that gives us no excuse not to use graphics nowadays. And there's pretty much unlimited amount of them. There are millions and probably billions of graphics out there to display words in a graphical format. So there's no excuse for us not to be using them. And I'm going to give you an example of this, and we're going to look at 2 different versions of the same information in terms of business document. So which of these 2 do you think looks better? You don't have to put it in the chat box or anything, just have a think to yourselves. Which of these 2 documents looks better to you? So this one here, so you can see there, common thing in terms of business document is just explaining the difference between independent financial advice and insurance products and stuff like that. So you can see we've got a bullet point with a white background with a little bit of text underneath. So you can see it's not the most incomprehensible information in the world. It's pretty clear. But even just by including a couple of graphics and just spreading it out a little bit more, you can see there that, again, the information is exactly the same. There's nothing that's changed between those 2 documents. I've just copied and pasted, but you can see even just by adding a bit of splash of yellow and a couple of graphics in there, that immediately makes it look more professional, immediately makes it more readable for your clients. And also they associate the different graphics with the different elements. So it actually makes it easier for them to comprehend as well. With this one, they've got no signposting at all. Their brain is not telling them the difference between independent financial advice and insurance, whereas this one here, you can see it's clearly splitting them up, and it's telling them that those 2 things are different. They're not in the same area. So even just by including little graphics like that, you can make a huge difference to readability as well. And of course, there's no rules really on using graphics to add a bit of beauty in your documents as well. The FCA doesn't have anything about this. As long as your documents are clear, fair, and not misleading, and it displays the information in a clear way, you can use them to pretty much whatever extent you want to. So in this example here, you can see the guys at Pura Vida, they've added a little line graphic there on the left hand side to match their brand colors. And what that does is, again, it just kind of switches the brain on from the last last one. If that wasn't there, it would all just look exactly the same. So what we've done is we've just added that graphic, and it just breaks it up a little bit, and it adds a little bit of kind of graphical format to it. So it's more colorful than simply just a white and black document. And you can see on the right-hand side there, we use things like little boxes so they have different levels for their clients. So we've had level 1, senior professional, level 2, senior professional or company shareholder director. And we've used little tiny graphics just to kind of graphically display the differences between them. And then we've put everything in boxes. And if I was a client looking at this, I'd really, really easily understand, okay, well, I must be in that level then. Whereas if this was just hidden in the text or even in a boring table, it will be completely different, and it'll be much more difficult for clients to understand. So even just by using graphics like that, just to make it look a bit better, again, massive changes to the readability. And again, it's telling the brain, okay, we need to switch back on again because this is really, really important. So don't be shy with using graphics to make it look beautiful as well. And of course, you can use them to signpost. So again, here's another example of a process that we've outlined there. I think this one is 5 stages, but you can see just by using little magnifying glasses for the discovery meeting, stage 2 is data gathering. So it's like a little clipboard with a plan on there. Stage 3 is developing your financial plan. So I've used some charts. You get the picture, but even just by that, the eye focuses on those first, and then it looks to the right and it looks at discovery meeting, data gathering. And what you're doing there is you're increasing the readability and the chance that your clients will actually understand your process as well. So, I mean, this might seem ridiculous. It might seem stupid, me just saying that these can have such big impacts on your documents, but they really, really, truly can. And there's no rules on not using graphics in your documents. You can use them to however extent you want to, as long as clients understand the information that is in there. So graphics, huge part of freshening up your terms of business. We do have a Q&A. I'm just going to have a look. I'll answer that at the end, Daniel, so you know. Okay, 5 is to humanize. So this is probably one that you weren't expecting, but obviously, there's a really cliched saying that financial planning is human to human, and it absolutely is. As we know, this is a very, very personal profession that we're in. Trust is massive, and human beings actually associate themselves better with humans, obviously, than they do with boring documents and corporations and organizations. So it's really important, if you can, to try and humanize in different ways in your documents. So the first way is to add pictures of you and your team. And again, there's no rules on this. There's no laws on this. You can add pictures of your team. There's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, it actually makes it look much more personable to have you and your team in these documents. So you can see on the left-hand side, we've got Lewis there with just a little bit of an explainer underneath about what you can expect from us. And the right-hand side, we've got Kelly from Lucent. And again, a simple, straightforward approach to advice. And that's another thing. You can add kind of marketing terms in there as well, but adding your team is a huge thing for humanizing your documents. So I definitely think you shouldn't shy away from it. But financial planning is a hugely trust-based profession, as we all know, so you should add pictures of you and your team in there if you can. But also, if you can, please try and avoid using kind of stock images like these. We've all seen the one of the old couple sitting on a beach in armchairs. Try and avoid that one if you possibly can. Similar one in the middle, 2 old people looking at a wooden structure of a house. I cannot see the relevance of that at all. And then the third one is, the kind of on the calendar scribbled out retire. If you can, just avoid using these samey kind of images all the time. I would much prefer if people started using pictures of them and their team rather than these kind of broad stock images of things that may have happened in the past, or things that you can get off Shutterstock and things like that. So avoid them if you can. And just remember, of course, this relates to language, is that you are talking to humans. So when we get terms of business templates through and kind of wording templates, we'll often just kind of copy and paste them and put them into our documents. But I would actually kind of argue against that. If you can, try and go in there and add elements of your personality, of your language in there, because you are talking to humans here. You're not talking to robots. As much as AI is popular nowadays, you are talking to human beings. So make sure that you personalize and you humanize the language to make sure that your clients understand actually what you're saying. So when you're going through, just think, if I was a client, would I actually understand what this person is telling me here, or what this document is telling me? And that's usually a good test for that kind of information. And the final thing is just to look at format. So Um, it's kind of an undealt with discussion at the moment that I'm having with a lot of people, is whether you should kind of bunch all this stuff together or whether you should have separate documents. And what I mean by that is a brochure and the terms of business and a client agreement all in one document. And I'm kind of, the jury's out on whether you should bunch them all together in one document or whether you should spread them out across 3 or even 2. I'm completely fine with either, to be honest, but there is a kind of, a lot of people are doing it at the moment, which is to kind of include a brochure or a proposition in the document, and then followed on by the terms of business, so fees, process, all the kind of legal and regulatory information, and then followed by a client agreement where they would sign. So it's completely fine to do whatever matches your process, but there are some pros and cons, which I'll talk about in a second. So here's one example of what these guys at Ellis Davis are doing. So on the left-hand side, they've included a nice little marketing style brochure proposition document in there, which just goes through them a little bit and what they do. And then it goes through the fees and the kind of process in the middle of the document in the terms of business, and then followed by a fee agreement at the end. And they bunch it all together in one document, so it's nice and clean for the clients. And that's their way, that's their process, but it doesn't mean that it has to be yours. So the pros of obviously having them all in one is that it's all in one, and you can send clients it just a simple document by email or even printing it off or whatever it is by a DocuSign. It is simpler to do that, and it does flow better. So rather than sending, documents where it says, please refer to our terms of business in one document, and then they have to go and read the other one. If you have it all in one, it just flows nicely, and you can kind of link between different areas of the document as well. There are some cons, of course, is that when you do have all documents in one, it does get a bit longer. So again, I'm not against length, but you just have to take that into consideration. For some people, that doesn't match their process. So for some people, they send certain documents before client meetings and other ones after the first client meeting. So you just need to make sure that it matches your process, obviously, and overload. If we're sending a massive document to a client at the start that has pretty much everything thrown in there, that can actually overload clients. So there is some argument about, sending them different documents at different periods of the process. Again, it's completely up to you which one you choose. But I just thought I'd mention that at the end as well. So that is pretty much it from me. I just want to tell you a little bit about what we do at the Hero product, obviously, just to make sure that people understand. So the Hero product is, half of it is documents. So half of it includes everything that we've been talking about today, and it actually includes unlimited documents as well. So over a 12-month period, you get everything that you have client-facing with your clients. You get to send to us, and we revolutionize everything. So we make sure that from the first step to the last step of a client process, every single thing in there looks exactly the same, it feels the same, and it is all nicely branded and nicely designed. And that really does revolutionize the client experience. So, right from financial plans all the way back to client agreements in terms of business, having everything aligned and having everything in the same way is a huge benefit to your clients. We also offer training for your team as well. So on this document, we don't just give you it and say, there you go. We do actually train teams on how to deliver these documents better and also deliver financial plans better to clients as well. Obviously, the benefit of this is that you communicate better to your clients and they understand you more. And it is, like I said at the start, it's so important to impress clients from day one. And having unlimited documents in there and having them all looking nice and fresh really does impress them from the very start of the process. And if you want to book a call with me, if you're watching this on a laptop, obviously you can scan it using your phone there. I am a millennial, so that's why I've included that in there. But if you want to just go to our website, docvinci.co.uk, you can find my link and you can book 20 minutes in a call with me just to explain a bit more about Hero Product and what we've been talking about today. But for now, I'm bang on time pretty much. So I'll open the floor to any questions now or any comments from you guys. If you do have any, you can pop them in the Q&A and in the chat box, or if you want to just get off now because it is 2:30. It's been lovely not seeing you, but it's been lovely having you here. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you very, very soon. So the first question is from Daniel. So he asks, which software would you recommend in designing your disclosure documents? Word, Adobe, Canva, as you mentioned. So I personally recommend Canva. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone, but what we actually do is we create the documents in Canva and then we convert them to PDFs in Adobe, and then that means that people can send them using Adobe Sign, DocuSign, whatever it is, or they can print them out afterwards. So I would definitely recommend to do that if you can. You can also do something cool on PDFs where you can turn them into forms so that clients never actually have to fill anything out using paper. They can just fill it all in digitally as well. So that really matches with that paper-free process that everyone's going for. But Canva is very, very affordable. Adobe, of course, is normally free. So you can do this stuff on a pretty low budget as well. So hopefully that helps you there, Daniel. And I think that is actually all the questions we've got for today. So hopefully you found that useful, everyone. We will be sending, obviously, a version of this round afterwards, so you can watch, and I'll also send the slides round with all the tips in there as well. But for now, thank you so much for your time on this Tuesday afternoon, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the week, and we'll see you all very, very soon. Bye-bye.